All right, and I believe we're live now, Kristen.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you everyone for joining. This is the webinar on blockchain in energy, which is being hosted partially through the Women's Energy Network, our South Texas chapter, and then also thanks to Zuber Lawler. So welcome to everyone. I'd like to give an advance thank you. We all know how technology works, so just in case we drop folks, I want to thank all of our panelists. Lola Stovall, who will go ahead and introduce the other panelists in a moment, but also Erlina Green Hamilton and Jennifer Kuhn. Thank you all for participating and joining. So a few just like quick words about the Women's Energy Network, or WEN. This event is being hosted through the South Texas chapter. If you're not a member, we would love to have you. We are a networking organization for women in the energy industry. That being said, we are also we welcome the men to join also. We need our allies to come along with us and help us in our mission. If you are not local to the South Texas area and would like to join WEN, we have chapters all over the country, and we are also global now. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Lola. So Lola is our moderator. She is a member of WEN South Texas and our chair of professional programs. In her free time, she is a corporate transactions and M&A lawyer with Zuber Lawler based in Houston. Lola's background is in traditional energy industry with current focus on clean tech and several other emerging industries. Prior to joining Zuber Lawler, she worked 19 years in-house with oil and gas producers, including 6 years at ExxonMobil. Lola oversaw operational and corporate matters, including regulatory compliance and contract negotiations for several billion-dollar properties, both onshore and offshore in the US and overseas. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Lola.
Thank you so very much, Kristen, and really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you, and also would like to introduce Alyssa Infante, who is behind the scenes, but she has been instrumental in putting this together with Kristen, who are both the board members of South Texas WEN. Zuber Lawler, that I'm working for, has offices across the United States in several different cities, and we do a lot of work for Fortune-listed companies, including energy and utility companies, and also cover all areas of M&A, finance, other deals, IP, regulatory work, litigation, and of course, technology and clean tech, and that's why we're here today. What sets us apart is the focus on emerging industries, because we believe that they will be our future tomorrow. We're talking about clean tech, crypto, NFT, blockchain, artificial intelligence, metaverse, and even quantum computing. What I'd like to share with you is the law firm is very diverse and we're very driven to excel. In 2021, Zuber Lawler earned the #1 spot in Law 360's Diversity Snapshot Survey. We're also an active member of National Association of Minority and Women-Owned Law Firms, NAMWOLF. One of our partners is on the board of NAMWOLF. So here with us today are Jen Kuhn and Erlina Green. Jen is my former partner at Zuber Lawler, and currently she's an assistant general counsel for product privacy and IP at Tricentis in Austin, Texas. She's also advisor to a blockchain-based art startup. Prior to this position, Ms. Kuhn was vice president and chief IP counsel of a publicly traded software company, where she managed their IP litigation and patent portfolio. Jen focuses on patent litigation, technology transfer, data protection, and privacy matters. She's also experienced in trademark, copyright, trade secrets, and cybersecurity. Jen is a fabulous legal writer, and her amicus briefs have been cited by the Federal Circuit and followed by the US Supreme Court. So please welcome Jen. And here with us today is also Erlina Green Hamilton. She's an author, she's a national speaker, and she's also a podcaster. She published 2 books and has given speeches nationwide, including West Point, United States Military Academy, Ignite in Dallas-Fort Worth, and Manhattanville College. She hosts the Dallas Business Podcast. Erlina speaks with business leaders, creatives, and entrepreneurs. The current season of her show is dedicated to educating the public on blockchain technology. So we're very, very lucky to have her here today. She's focused on its development and the implications in the space that it will have in the future, and also in the energy sector and beyond. In 2021, Erlina accepted a position to sit on the advisory board of the Texas Blockchain Council. And that is an entity that's shaping blockchain policy in Texas. So Erlina, please tell us, what is blockchain? How do you explain blockchain technology to someone who is not yet familiar with it?
Well, first, I want to thank you all for putting on this event. I'm always excited, especially when women are coming into this industry, whenever they are interested and passionate about understanding like what's going to unfold here the next couple of years, what's unfolding now, and what the future is going to look like. The simplest way I explain blockchain technology to people who have no clue about this space is blockchain is a decentralized digital ledger. I think we can all agree what digital is online. It functions with the use of technology, but I think that word decentralization is probably what people are maybe having a hard time probably wrapping their head around. When we look at the system of the past, when we look at the system of today, we have centralized mechanisms, meaning that everything is going out from the center. That means communication, information. As we move over to decentralization, we're going to distribute that. We're going to distribute that information. We're going to distribute that security. We're going to distribute where the information is being held, which strengthens security. And so the easiest way maybe to formulate this or even picture what decentralized or blockchain technology is to think about a Excel document. It's a ledger. It operates in a system called Microsoft, but it's not decentralized. It probably sits on one person's computer, and to share it, you're sending links out or inviting people in. Decentralization means everyone has access. Everyone keeps that file on their system as a node in the network.
Very, very good. So what are the benefits and opportunities of using blockchain?
Well, so when we look at blockchain now, when we look at the applications now, when we look at the opportunities as they sit today, because I want everyone to keep in mind that this technology is in development. It is being tested. It is being looked over. Developers, computer scientists are continuing to build out the technology. But when we look at blockchain, we want to think about its properties. So we use words like immutable. We use words like programmable. We use words like transparent. We use words like incorruptible. And so when we look at, let's just take programmable, or let's just take transparent, for instance. Right now, if I was to go into, let's say, Coinbase and to buy, well, let's use what's pretty popular today. Most people probably have heard of NFTs, non-fungible tokens. If I was to go in and make a purchase on a platform like OpenSea, make a purchase, maybe Ether or Ethereum, most people are more familiar with that terminology. Transparency in this blockchain system means I've made that transaction, I've made that purchase, and now it's held, it's listed, it's visible, transparent on the blockchain. So now you can actually see that transaction that I made. When we look at words like immutable, the blockchain is immutable, something that is going to be there forever. There's so many analogies that people throw out, but what I like to reckon it as is that what my mom used to tell me about the internet. You know, when you put it out there, you got to be careful because people, it's going to live on the internet forever. Well, we know now that there's companies that can go and they can scrub the internet, they can scrub, identities, they can scrub information. But when we look at the blockchain, that is not doable. So it is immutable. Once something is put into the blockchain, programmed into the blockchain, it's going to live there. It's going to live there forever. And again, it's going to be distributed. So it's going to be out there, like most people like to say. So that's just a few of the benefits.
Oh, and also, I know it's not visible to us here, but our audience can see now the schematic, the screenshot that you shared with us, Erlina, which is very, very helpful. to show what is centralized, decentralized, and distributed. But I know you also had some interesting examples and referring to vending machines in the early days and how the history of blockchain, the whole history of blockchain is very fascinating. Would you share that with us, please?
So when we look at, most people are wondering, did blockchain come about in 2009 with Bitcoin, with the Bitcoin white paper? And it dates back a little further than that. 1991, the first research project was put out there, but we know it didn't come into great use until 2009. And so what I like to tell people is, if you're interested in learning more about how going to impact your industry, how this is going to impact your finances, how this is going to impact the future. Start with the Bitcoin white paper. Start with the mystery man, Mr. Satoshi Nakamoto. Start there, because what I also believe is that we can glean the uses, we can glean what something is built for when we go back to the origins of what the creator had in mind. And so Satoshi Nakamoto, for those of you who are not familiar, he's a man that no one knows. He is not around. We don't know if he's, dead or alive, but we know he created this thing called Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin white paper really lays out what I like to say, a vision for the future. We're going to talk about blockchain here, but what most people don't understand is, or most people don't know, is that blockchain, the word blockchain, isn't even mentioned in the Bitcoin white paper. What's mentioned in there is when we look at peer-to-peer transactions. So putting the power, putting the sovereignty back in the individual's hands to make transactions with people that they trust and don't trust, that they know and don't know. But also when we look at what the white paper has, the peer-to-peer transactions, but it also lays out a plan for what we're using now, the terminology that we're using now, the blockchain. And so what I tell people again is, go back, take a look at the white paper, even if you don't get past the first, paragraph where it really lays out the kind of the vision. I think it's the best way to kind of set in your mind, what does the future look like? One thing it also covers is the need or not need for third-party intermediaries. And so who are third-party intermediaries? Well, today, our banking system, when we look at real estate, we have escrow, and we have title, we have all these people that sit in between transactions that are happening between people, peer-to-peer, that are happening between individuals. And so what does it mean for a technology, again, with the properties of immutability, transparency, programmable? What does that mean for that technology to now facilitate those transactions between people, instead of having big institutions do that for us?
Very interesting. I think it's an eternal question of whether eliminating big institutions would also eliminate people who are working right now in that. But tell me, we talked a little bit about the banking system, but what other type records can be kept in blockchain?
Oh gosh. So what are the use cases now? And I know we can look at different industries. I know we talk a lot about the banking industry because we're going to, decentralized finance, or DeFi is going to change a lot of things as well. But when we look at the energy sector specifically, when we look at customer billing, that information being held on the blockchain, when we look at verification of identities, virtual identities. And so what does it mean for an energy company? What does it mean for those identities to be verified, that information to be stored and verified on the blockchain? And we have less, again, I hesitate, but not really, because the future always demanded that we do more creative, or more, not even more creative, that we have more time to do what we are passionate about. And so when we talk about, Lila, you just mentioned the loss of employment and jobs. Well, that depends on how you look at it, because maybe it's a chance for us to reevaluate how we've been spending our time. And maybe this is the better technology that allows us to go do that. And so when we look at benefits in the energy sector, well, cross-border payments will happen, seamlessly in seconds, if not minutes. Fast settlement, security, customer billing will go to the blockchain. We look at virtual identities will be verified on the blockchain. And that's just to name a few. That's just to name a few with the use cases that are being put out today.
And I think this is a good opportunity for us to talk about a very energy specific, especially a very Texas energy specific problem. And that is if you are drilling a well and the mineral rights for the production from that well go out fractionally to multiple owners, whether it's 10 owners or depending on the deposits. I actually don't know what the upper limit of owners are, especially when you might have had family ownership of the surface rights of the land. And then that family ownership of the mineral rights might get spread out to all of the kids and grandkids and great grandkids. That's one example of a situation where you might be able to replace the distribution, the kind of the financial distribution of the assets from the current system, which seems kind of paper heavy, process heavy, to a more efficient blockchain based method of verification. And if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to take a step back and kind of describe this problem as I understand it, and keeping in mind that while I am a technology lawyer, I am not a mineral rights lawyer. I have always relied on Lola for that. She's the brilliant one when it comes to mineral rights. But when you think about this, if you are a big mineral rights owner, you might actually have to hire a bank and have the bank's trust department manage those mineral rights for you. That's 5% off the top. In most cases, those banks love to charge. You might have an internal company manager who's managing the mineral rights. You have to employ a bookkeeper inside your company to make sure you're getting paid what you should. And you'd have to pay a mineral rights lawyer like Lola to make sure that everything is being done properly. If you are a smaller owner and you're just getting statements from a mineral rights management company, say you're getting payments from Coda, and a lot of people think, oh, family mineral rights, you must be like flying around in a private jet. Maybe you're just getting mineral rights enough that let you buy your kid a Subaru. It's not private jet money, it's private Subaru money. So there's a wide range of mineral rights that might be administered through a kind of a rights management vendor like Coda. If you're a small owner, you're like thinking, how do I verify that I'm actually getting paid what I ought to be getting paid out of this well? How do I know that the extraction company isn't overcharging for the on-site services that they're providing? I mean, to a certain extent, that is the responsibility of essentially the primary mineral rights owner, and the other fractional owners might not have a way of really having any visibility at all into that parts of transactions. So if you were instead, and we're going to talk a little bit about a specific kind of entity or organization that you can set up using a blockchain-based technology, if you wanted to simplify that process so that you didn't have this tremendous overhead of the bank trust and the lawyer and the bookkeeper and the manager for a big mineral rights owner, or if you wanted to have complete transparency for a smaller mineral rights owner, it is possible for all of the mineral rights for any particular wellhead to be put into an LLC. And then the LLC would put those rights into a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization. And that DAO would receive the funds from the production and would also receive the information associated with the costs associated with the production. And then all of the mineral rights owners would receive tokens in the DAO representing their fractional interest in the well production revenue. And so that money would go into the DAO, and the DAO on the blockchain through the execution of these smart contracts. So it would be an Ethereum type blockchain, because the Ethereum type blockchains support smart contracts, whereas the original Bitcoin blockchain really great for large financial transactions, but doesn't have enough space in the code to add in a smart contract functionality. So if you had an Ethereum type blockchain, that money would pop into the DAO. Possibly the DAO members would have the opportunity to vote and approve the expenses that they had received, expense information that they had received from the production company. And then the DAO would split out automatically all of the right amounts of money from that, essentially that monthly tranche of money that you would get from the production company, just split it all out. And it would record how much each token member received. And could also record the information that it had received from the production company regarding expenses. So you have this immutable transaction that is transparent. And it is also nearly frictionless.
Yeah.
You are not sending out a bond paper envelope with like 10 sheets of paper, some of which need to be signed, some of which need to be filled in. Do you need to have a tax ID number? All of that could be simplified, and all of the people sitting in the Coda Resources office I think they have an office in the Woodlands, they would find better things to do with their time, because it really isn't anybody's life goal to be managing that paper. We all have to do some of that paper management, but if we could reduce it and free, that is just an incredible efficiency. It's a force multiplier for any company to be able to identify these pain points of identification, of verification, and things that need to be recorded immutably, and deploy a blockchain solution for them. Now, there are a lot of complicated legal issues that come into the ownership of mineral rights, because it is a right that has to be transferred on paper. And it is as simple as I'm describing it with the LLC and the DAO, but we have yet to see whether or not that Wyoming-based LLC with a DAO sitting inside of it that's going to perform these operations, those haven't actually been, how do I say this, legally blessed by a court as an enforceable organization, right? So we are going, in the next 5 years, maybe 10 years, a lot of these DAOs are going to get set up. They're going to operate. Things are going to fall apart as things do. And we're going to find out how the courts will treat these kinds of novel technology implementations in order to solve these business problems.
Right. And I think just to jump in here, Jennifer, excellent job explaining the real world application. I think one thing that I wanted to further stress is, and you said it, but I want to stress it for the audience, is that through smart contracts, which Jennifer, I know you're going to talk a little bit more about, this is executed automatically. And so you think about the time it takes for some of those processes to happen in the real world today. No, through the smart contract, the agreement is met here, and it happens automatically.
And also, Jen, you brought a very good point that at some point there is a de minimis where things drop off. And to the extent that we have division order analysts or lease analysts sitting right now on this call, here are the practical applications. So you know that below $100, you're not distributing the royalties unless somebody requests in writing. And then if they do, then that lowers down to $10, which still you have a ton of dollars sitting in escrow money. Essentially, you're holding those funds, you'd rather not. And sometimes you end up cheating them, and sometimes you end up distributing them at year end. It just depends on what point you get to at that point. But that would eliminate a lot of those fractional owners that you have their money, they're entitled to the money. The cost of administration, and that's the sole reason for that law, is that the cost of administration exceeds the value of writing and mailing the check. That's really our problem there. And there are two other practical applications where we all know, working in the energy industry, where you have the bottlenecks. It's when you purchase assets and you have to load essentially the lease terms into your system. So if you could make that process seamless, where all the flags set for deductions have been verified approved, like Jen said, by a decentralized system, and they simply carry from one company to another without the need for manual validation of those basically decisions, legal interpretations, if you wish. That would just solve the transition. Probably half of the transition issues arise out of the lease transfers. And then the other is when you have transfer, well, sometimes it's transactional transfer of royalty interest by assignment, but a lot of times it's because a royalty owner dies and now you have 5 heirs. And nobody knows, because an oil and gas company is not sitting there in the county records checking who died, right? So it's a passive process. If it could be automated, where the state records tie into the system where the transfer just happens and there is just a flag that needs to be turned on, as opposed to waiting and perhaps is cheating those dollars. That's also a problem that can be solved by this type of technology. And again, this is a huge practical issue for division order analysts when they have owners that passed away, nobody knows, the checks keep going out the door, they're not being cashed. And again, the company is having to do something with the dollars and they don't know where to send them. So that is an excellent point, Jen. And I think this is a perfect transition also to the smart contract. And what is it and why do we need it in the energy sector? And what are some of the obstacles to implementing that?
Yeah, so to talk a little bit more about, is this me or Erlina? Are you going first, Erlina?
Yeah, no, this is you, Jen.
This is all me. All right, so the smart contract takes a blockchain-based, kind of like a blockchain technology from just being maybe a payment, having a payment use case, and lets it have a more active business role. And it is where each time you're deploying this blockchain and you're saying, I'm going to pay Erlina one Ethereum token, one Ether. And Erlina has an agreement where every time she receives an Ethereum token into her wallet, she's going to peel off 10% to somebody else. And that payment gets made automatically. That is the long and short of it. So it essentially lets you divide payment streams. One of the places where we see this implemented most frequently is in NFT sales, or if you are buying NFTs, you will see this in NFT sales. So to take one of the most famous NFT platforms right now, I think, is Tom Brady's Autograph, because Tom Brady is getting all the sports stars to sign on to Autograph. And so when a new token collection goes up on Autograph, there's 2 things that you will likely see in the fine print for that collection. I buy a token, a Gronk token. Gronk's got great tokens. They're very popular. So I spend $200 on this token. 10% of the 10% of the original sale is very likely going to go straight back to Autograph as the platform fee.
Yep.
And so it's not like the money is going to drop into an account somewhere outside of Tom Brady's house, and Tom Brady's bookkeeper is going to write somebody a check for $20. Or Tom Brady's accountant is going to receive a check for $20. That's not the way it's going to happen. I am going to make the $200 payment in Ethereum on the Autograph platform, and then 180 is going to go off to Gronk, probably something like that, and 10% is going to go to Autograph automatically.
Right.
It's not going to first go to Gronkowski, and then Gronkowski is going to team is going to have to report profits and royalties back with a long and complicated royalty statement, which is the way royalties in the arts and entertainment industry had traditionally been done. Book authors and artists would frequently complain that they would get royalty statements that they could not understand and could not decipher. It's a real inefficiency in the system if you have to hire an expert to explain your revenue statement to you. And honestly, you see the same kind of problem in oil and gas. How is an individual owner supposed to know what all these payments are for? You essentially have to hire somebody to explain it to you. So this is the smart contract system just takes that all out of any individual hands. The smart contracts on the token itself. When the payment is received, the payment will be distributed to the proper percentage owners. Then when the token is resold, a percentage will, when I say I buy that token and it increases in value to $1,000. So my Gronk NFT is now worth $1,000 and I sell it, I don't get $1,000 worth of Ethereum. I get, which was probably like 0.5 here, maybe 0.4 ETH right now, but I don't get $1,000 worth of Ethereum. I don't get the full sales price because the platform is going to take its cut, and then the original token project creator is going to take their cut. Let's talk a little bit about how we see this playing out in the real world. One of the early adopters into smart contract based management is the one of the big Danish shipping companies, because when you bring a shipment in through your border checks and customs checks, and then there's a lot of paperwork that makes sure that everybody gets paid for the shipment, both being the shipment coming in and the payment that's supposed to be paid back to the shipping company for that. Right now, they have a blockchain-based system that is triggered by the scan, the barcode scan on the container as it passes through that last border check. The machine scans it, it sends a signal to the blockchain. The blockchain says, all right, contract complete, payments made. Nobody has to sit down and check the box saying, yes, we received the payment, and then send the purchase order to the procurement or the finance department for payment. It just eliminates all that friction. And it can be like I said before, this is a great way to reduce the friction and reduce the paperwork in your business.
Yeah. And I'll just jump in here and say this real quick. The best and simplest definition I've heard of smart contracts is that gosh, I just had it in my head. Smart contracts automatically execute when predefined conditions are met. Or better to say it this way as well, business logic codified. We're taking a contract, we're taking a paper physical contract, and we're codifying it, meaning we have developers that are coding the language, and when preconditions are met, the contract executes automatically.
This is great. I'm afraid to even ask the next question, kind of closer to home, right? So are we getting closer to the time where we don't have to sit in front of our computer on the payday and the paycheck just goes out seamlessly? We are, right? This is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
I think so. I think I think until we have a treasury-backed US dollar coin that is a US government digital asset, I think most people, I talk to people in Texas and they're like, people really get paid in that? And I'm like, yeah, they do. And you are up, we have all recently seen what the risks are with accepting payments in digital assets, because they end up looking a lot more like volatile commodities than like currencies. Once we've gotten through the last couple of months, I think this is an unusual dip that we are going to come out of. And I also really do believe that there will be a US Treasury-backed dollar coin in the very near future. I think before the end of the Biden administration, right now, President Biden issued essentially an executive order ordering a handful of US federal agencies to figure out how to do it and what it would mean for what regulations they would need to promulgate in their interaction with other agencies. I think there are a lot of national security issues that make this essentially a necessary thing for the US to have, because it inures to our benefit that the physical dollar and the electronic dollar, as verified by a bank, is the reserve currency of the world. And so having a digitally backed, essentially a blockchain-based US dollar is also going to inure to our benefit. I know some of you may be thinking, hey, what about Tether coin? Didn't that just go ploof? And the problem with the Tether coin, I won't go into it here. It was pitched as a stable coin, but it wasn't stable and it wasn't a coin, because in order for it to really be stable, it would have had to have a pretty significant treasury of US dollars held essentially by the project developers in order to make sure that they could maintain the stable value. And that's something that they didn't have. So.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in here and say this. I mean, the central bank already has a name for it. It's called CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency. And I'll just read here from Secretary Janet Yellen's remarks on April 7th of 2022. I'll try to skip to the good part, but I'll give you a little history of what she said. She said, in 1990, there were fewer than 3 million internet users. Now there are about 4.5 billion, and we take for granted that many aspects of our financial lives can be managed from small internet connected devices that fit in the palm of our hands. This growth in digital services has opened a world of possibilities and risks that would have seemed fantastical only a few decades ago. Financial services, along with most industries, have evolved in response to exponential advances in computing power in connectivity. They already see what's about. I mean, the government and our elected officials already see what's happening. I mean, I had the privilege of going to the Texas Blockchain Summit in Austin last year, and I'm telling you right now, there were so many elected officials there. They want to know about the space. They were asking questions. They want to make policy. And so they want people that are educated to really reach out, give them a call, send a letter. And so the central bank will do what it's going to do to kind of protect its standing, and not only here in this country, but in the world. And we will see, of course, CBDCs or central bank digital currencies in the future.
Very good. And I know that I read that MIT was involved in that study with the government. And I know one of Texas schools as well. You may know, Erlina, which one it is. So in case people want to follow something closer to home.
Yeah.
So also, let's see, the early adopters seems to be, or what we think should be the early adopters is the lease interpretation and the lease analyst department, right? The division order department in an energy company, logistics, perhaps, as you mentioned, Jen, with the tracking, that's very natural. Operations accounting is another thing I can think of, just because there is really no reason for all the validations that happen between the wellhead and the intake of the plant, because all of that can occur automatically. This is just a system of tracking there, right? So what about other applications? What about on the power generation side, Jen?
All right, so this is the part of the essentially blockchain technologies that I find incredibly interesting. I think the blockchain could help transform the energy industry in Texas. So the first way is people are being creative in going after what you might think of as orphan assets. That is, and the first kind of orphan asset that comes to mind in Texas is natural gas that's either flared or vented from drilling operations. So I encourage you all to take a look at the Texas startup called Giga. There's a couple of A&M students who said, hey, there's natural gas at the wellheads. And the thing that everyone should know about blockchain mining that I'm going to explain to you now, when you complete a transaction on a blockchain, especially if it's a proof of work blockchain like Bitcoin and Ethereum, there are computers, you remember Erlina's diagram, there are computers all over the world who are competing to validate that transaction. So in my earlier example, I'm buying that Gronk token off of Autograph. There are Ethereum computers participating in the Ethereum network that are all competing to validate that transaction. And they validate that transaction by completing a very complicated math problem. And Bitcoin and Ethereum and a lot of cryptocurrencies are all on these proof of work networks. And if you are participating in the network, you can validate the transaction, or you can just mine and complete increasingly complicated mathematical problems in order to generate the newest Bitcoin that's going to be dropped into the network for this year. I think Erlina might have more details upon this, but the important thing to know about Bitcoin is there is a limited number of Bitcoins that are ever going to be available. Bitcoin releases are going to stop at 22 million. So the way computer server owners will generate money using Bitcoin using their servers is either to validate transactions on the network or to straight up mine for the newly dropped Bitcoins that are being dropped into the network. And so that uses a lot of energy. I mean, and that is kind of, we call like the Bitcoin blockchain and the Ethereum blockchain proof of work blockchains. That is, new transactions are validated onto the blockchain by these really complicated math problems done by computers. Proof of work, there's my favorite way of describing that is proof of waste. You are proving that you wasted a ton of electricity by solving this math problem. So Giga, these 2 A&M students said, what if we put a bunch of servers in a shipping container, and we set up a business where we're dropping these shipping containers right next to wellheads that would have gas that they would otherwise be flaring. And then we connect the gas where the gas would be flared. Instead, we connect that gas to a generator, connect the generator to the shipping container. The shipping container, all it needs is that power connection and an internet connection. And the servers in the shipping container are just running nonstop as fast as they can, validating transactions and mining for new Bitcoins. And I think they made millions of dollars in their first couple of years. I mean, it has been very, very successful. So all you need is that internet connection. You don't need a way to get that generated electricity back to the grid. You're just using it right where it is. So it is a good use of orphan gas. It is not actually more climate friendly than just burning the gas, except for the fact that you are shifting generation that would be taking place elsewhere to this wellhead, and you're providing a real incentive for the well operators to essentially tighten up the system if they can. If I were a well operator and I had the opportunity to mine Bitcoin near the well based on the excess gas, I'd be looking around for ways to say, am I venting gas anywhere where I could tighten that up and capture it? Now, like I said, I am not an expert on drilling, but I do know that there's a lot of this kind of vented gas that isn't really nobody's really tracking, or it's harder to track where it's coming from and whether or not it's being properly piped through to where it should be getting flared, because gas venting is a lot worse for the environment than flaring it and burning it off. But you might as well make some money off of your excess gas and pipe it into one of these Bitcoin mining rigs that you can drop right at a wellhead. So that is one of the ways that I think we are going to essentially put to better use some of that excess gas. But the even more exciting thing that is happening is we are having this with the same thing with solar generation. We have, Texas, as we all know, West Texas is a great place to generate renewable energy from renewable sources. There's a ton of sun and there's a ton of wind. there is, I wrote this all down, we have 34 gigawatts of potential power to be generated in West Texas. There's 5 gigawatts of demand, 12 gigawatts of transmission. So Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk have partnered with a company called Blockstream to build essentially a proof of concept cryptocurrency transaction validation, cryptocurrency mining operation in West Texas with a 3.8 megawatt array and 12 megawatt hours of storage. That is kind of the standard Tesla big array for generation and the standard Tesla big array for storage. And the idea is that you can use the money that you earn by mining cryptocurrencies, validating blockchain transactions to justify building the generation sites. And as they've said, as they stand this up, they're going to add wind to the mix for more generation. And then it becomes a lot more cost effective to build, just for someone else to come in and build the transmission to the site once the site is already paid, the generation at the site is already paid for itself and then some. So for a lot of reasons, I think Elon Musk has when it comes to improving existing products, he is brilliant and he can see opportunities that other people miss. I'm not really sure that I think that what he's currently been doing with Twitter is going to work out for him or Twitter. That is a completely aside. But when it comes to hardware, what he has done with the electric car, what he's done with rockets at SpaceX, he has a way of a vision of seeing what the best future state could be like for that particular hardware product. So I have a lot of faith that this is going to turn out to a great way to fund and improve generation capacity in West Texas.
Yeah.
That's excellent point. And I will say that there are lots of interested parties in this. First of all, Texas Department of Environmental Quality and the Railroad Commission. But primarily, when we talk about clean air, yes, of course, there are all kinds of rules about reporting that flare that may or may not always be consistently followed, I will say. And the other set of stakeholders that would be very interested in that are royalty owners, because never ever is it nobody's guess. If it's flared, all right, there is zero revenue from that. But if it's not, or if there is even an opportunity for another market, then you have other stakeholders that are very much interested in making sure that this is monetized. And I know, Erlina, we talked a little bit before about the sustainability aspects also of blockchain, and I'd love for you to share that with us.
I'll just say this. I'll say this. When we look at what the energy sector is doing, they're doing a great job of jumping into the space, figuring it out, running pilot programs, and seeing what the results are, going back and tweaking and doing it again. I mean, we look at other companies like Brooklyn Microgrid. They've developed an app that enables energy trading between consumers in neighboring boroughs. When we look at nonprofits like the Energy Web Foundation, they've already devised a number of applications in the energy sector that could benefit from the integration of blockchain technology. Again, it goes back to, what are they using this for? Well, they say customer billing, renewable energy certificates, and peer-to-peer trading, energy sharing networks. And then, of course, it's something, Lola, you and I spoke about on a previous call, that the CEO of BTL joined a whole consortium of other big energy companies like BP to run a 12-week pilot in the energy trading. So they ran an energy trading pilot, and I'll give you guys, this feedback from the co-founder of that company, BTL, Guy Tarford Thompson. He said, having demonstrated the reductions in risk and cost savings that are achievable now that we have an opportunity to deliver the first successful blockchain-based applications to the energy market. So they're already seeing reductions of risk and already they're seeing also cost savings. And so I'm sure, again, the energy sector is doing such a great job in using this technology that more and more things will roll out here in the coming, if not year, here in the coming months as well. So.
And Jen, thank you so much, Erlina. And also, Jen, I think we talked a little bit about how businesses are using energy credits and how they stack them up with other credits.
Right. So one of the other kind of business techniques that I saw when I was doing some additional research into this is we've seen businesses stack the solar energy credit along with maybe an opportunity zone credit. And the great thing about an opportunity zone credit is that if you have a money coming into that investment on which you should owe capital gains, if you're an individual, you're going to be paying 20% capital gains on that on your gain. You can put that money into an opportunity zone investment, and as long as you keep it in long enough and follow the rules for OZ investments, you are going to be able to take it out on the other side and not have to pay the capital gains especially the capital gains that was flowing into the OZ investment. Now, setting up an opportunity zone investment is kind of a heavy lift for a lot of individual investors, and companies are using both kind of the solar energy credits, the opportunity zone, and then also using loans under the Rural Electricity America program, which provides low-cost credit for developing rural electric programs. Stacking those three credits in those three government programs together and repurposing like prisons in rural areas and other abandoned municipal facilities in rural areas. And then what they're doing is they're tokenizing these investments so that if I have $10,000 that I'm going to have to pay capital gains taxes on, I can buy tokens in this investment. It's going to qualify for an opportunity zone tax credit. And then when I take my money out the other side, I don't owe any capital gains taxes on it. So it is stacking these credits becomes easier when you are talking about if easier for a small investor when you're talking about kind of DAO type structures. And we are seeing this being deployed kind of throughout the West and in some areas in the Northern Plains states.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. And we're getting close to the end of our hour. And I wanted to thank both Erlina and Jen. And please, to our audience, check out their bios on LinkedIn. They're phenomenal speakers. And Erlina wanted to say something.
I just want to say one more thing. What we understand with the adoption, I know that was probably one of the last questions that we didn't get to, but what we want to say about adoption is that the more people get educated in the space, the more adoption that we're going to have. And this is coming. This is here. The internet always needed a native language, a native currency. So that's why we get the DeFi space. That's why we get the cryptocurrencies. And so some resources I just wanted to leave with people. Check out Saifedean Amos' book, The Bitcoin Standard. Check out Platform Revolution when we look at going from Web 1.0 to Web 3.0 and read a good book like The Sovereign Individual. Why is this important? Why is this happening now? And why is it not going anywhere? I think these 3 books will get you light years ahead.
And for further resources, I would say Erlina's got this great podcast. And if you're a podcast person, I'm a big fan of Pivot with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. You can just search through their past episodes, see where they're talking about blockchain issues, crypto issues, because Kara Swisher gets it right, and she understands it.
Yes, that's fantastic. And also, Erlina is a professional speaker. So if there is an interest, you can absolutely have her at one of your events. Just again, go ahead and check out her LinkedIn. And now I wanted to turn it over to Kristen so that she can talk to us a little bit about exciting things happening at WEN.
Sure. Thank y'all so much. This was by far the most education that I personally have received on this topic. So thank you. Wanted to give a last shout out to the Women's Energy Network. We do have a bunch of good events coming up. We are going to be having some networking events this summer. We are going to have a happy hour where you'll also have an aura photo taken so you can learn about your own personal energy and have a drink and socialize with some other women. We are also going to be having a panel in August at a happy hour about imposter syndrome, where we will have a customized cocktail. It'll either be called the WEN Sunrise or the WEN Sunset. We haven't decided, but our logo is that sunburst. So we have a bunch of good stuff coming up. If you are interested in being a member and you're not currently a member, you can connect with me on LinkedIn.
Very good. Thank you so very much.
Thank you all.
And hope to see you again at other WEN events.